Greetings, my name is Prabha, and in this video I'd like to give an overview of a hobby project of mine. It's an app that serves as a player assistant when playing a board game known as Fire in the Lake. If you haven't heard of Fire in the Lake, the link in the app will take you to the game's website. Fire in the Lake is a neo-legendary simulation of the Vietnam conflict and is part of a GMT Games series known as Coin, short for counterinsurgency. I named my app Gia Long. He was a 19th century emperor who took power after a 30-year civil war and gave Vietnam both its name and its borders. The street where this apartment block is located also bears his name. So to me, the name bookends the modern conflict. What this app is not is a digital version of the game. There is no map and there is no display of the text from the event cards. It's intended purely as a supplement to the physical board game. In bullet point form, the features of this app are an automation of the bots, I'll expand on that shortly, a player turn assistant. By only showing valid play options, it helps the player to focus and speeds up the building of their move. And 3, an assembler of the card deck and a turn manager. The app will assemble a card deck based on your setup choices and then coordinate turns between the sides. This is an opinionated design decision, and this means the app doesn't easily integrate with other automated deck managers like those on Vassal and Tabletop Simulator. It's best played with the actual physical board game. My preferred approach is to use a 3-deck card tray to hold the cards for the 3 periods of the war, with the cards sorted within each phase, so that I can easily find the next selected card. That way it's also quicker to set up and pack away between games. I built this app using Flutter, a framework from Google that lets me create apps for both Apple and Android. My intention was for the interface to fit on a phone-sized screen, say 5.5 inches, so that it doesn't intrude in the board game setup like a laptop would. I haven't tested this on anything smaller. It also works well on a cheap Android tablet like this Lenovo M8. What did I mean by an automation of the bots? Fire in the Lake is intended to be played by 2 to 4 players. The bots are a series of instructions for a player to simulate the actions of one or more opponents. These instructions are contained in Chapter 8 of the rulebook and summarized in a flowchart that comes with the physical board game. There's also a list of special instructions for most events. Those bot instructions, in order to create capable opponents, get quite detailed, and the additional cognitive load to execute them, quite frankly, disrupts the flow of the game. This app is an implementation of those instructions in Chapter 8 and for the events, and lets you stay focused and fully in the mindset of your chosen side. In addition, stepping back from micromanaging the bots helps you perceive them more as inscrutable adversaries, and lets you, at least occasionally, be surprised by their moves. Okay, time for a demo. I'll do this in 2 passes. The first with an all-bots game, the second with a human player. That will let us focus on different parts of the user interface each time. Up the top, you can see 3 tabs. This Play tab is where we drive from. The second tab shows the state of the board, and the third archives past turns. We'll look at each of them shortly. The first screen that we see on opening the app is this one. There's a list of credits and a link to the Fire in the Lake section of the GMT website. The setup action at the bottom takes us to this screen, where we choose the scenario we're playing, whether we want the political rhythm option for campaigns of more uniform length, and the side we want to play. For this pass, we're going with an all-bots game. When we submit and accept our settings, the button now says Begin. At this point, let's switch to the Board tab. What you see here is simply a listing of map spaces from the board and the contents and status of each. You'll see the control and support status, whether they are terror or sabotage markers, and the forces present and the status of the special forces, if there are any of those. Along the top are the values of the 4 victory markers, the 3 resource markers, and patronage, aid, the econ level, and the status of the trail. Along the bottom are the eligibilities of each side, the current coup card, capabilities and momentum effects in play, and the active US policy. I needed to come up with concise names for the lines of communication to fit on this screen. They always start with RT, contain the route number or numbers for the roads, or MKG if it's the Mekong. For routes with multiple segments, I've added a suffix letter, A for the northernmost, B for the next one down, and so on. You can also touch on the name of any line of communication to get a list of the cities and towns that it connects. At this point, the board tab is showing the starting setup for the chosen scenario, just like the setup details at the end of the rulebook. So this can be used to set up the board, and personally, I find it easier to use than the rulebook. Let's go back to the play tab and hit begin. Now the game has commenced and the first eligible bot has taken its turn. At the top, you'll see both the current card and the next one to come. The bot's moves are displayed in a scrollable list, with operations and special activities color-coded. Each of those in turn is laid out as a series of single actions. At the end, any victory markers that change during the turn are listed. In this case, the US has undertaken a train operation and advice special activity. You can also see from the top that we are in a monsoon period, and the next card, failed attempt, is a coup card. When I hit next turn, the next bot has its turn. In this case, the VC undertaken a terror operation and subvert special activity. When we get to a coup, you'll see a longer listing than usual. Each of the phases are laid out. So we have resources, support phase, the redeploy phase, commitment phase with a change in US policy, and the reset phase. All laid out for you. And on this turn, the Arvin had played an event. You'll see the event title at the top as a newspaper headline. So we need to regularly update the game board with each bot turn. We have a couple of options. We can move down the list on the Play tab and replicate each action on the board. An alternative approach is to move over to the Board tab. The map spaces involved in the turn just completed are up the top and in a lighter color. In addition, the top row of the Board tab will have the latest changes to its numbers highlighted in white. We can also see that 2 sides have reached their victory conditions. Those numbers are highlighted in red. We can use this to quickly synchronize the state of the board with the app. I use a combination of the tabs, stepping through the individual actions listed in the Play tab on the board, and then using the Board tab as a quick check. Having run a few turns, let's have a look at the Pass tab. This stores the screen displays from past turns. It opens on the most recent turn, and we can swipe through to earlier turns. Now let's set up another game, and this time, let's join in as a player. Originally, I was just going to provide a simple input screen where the user would update the state of the board after their turn. But after I tried out Kurt Selmer's bot automation program for another Quine game, Colonial Twilight, I came to appreciate the value of providing guidance to the player in planning their move. This is a good time to talk about the app's current limitations. Right now, you can only play as one of the insurgents. Building user interfaces for each side to support their custom operations and special activities is a lot of work. So I led off with the 2 simpler sides. The second limitation is that playing as an insurgent, you can only pick shaded events. Building custom workflows for 240 events on 120 cards for 4 sides is even more work, so again I'll let off with covering half of them. So the option to play an unshaded event to mess with your insurgent ally is not available yet. That's why in the next part when I talk about player actions, they are all insurgent ones. I do eventually want to add the 2 coin sides as player options, but here's one more limitation I probably won't tackle. The setup allows just one player, with the other 3 sides being played by bots. Having more than one player means way more pathways to juggle. What's needed here is an efficient way for the player to enter their choice from a wide range of operation and special activity combinations, as well as their choices when playing one of the huge range of events, both normal and pivotal, and coup actions. I've narrowed the required interface down to a set of 4 input screens that can be chained into combinations to accommodate all the myriad options. So let's see how that works. It's our turn now playing as the NBA. Let's go with an operation and activity. Now this drop-down shows what options we have. Not all may be available depending on the state of the board and the game. So that streamlines the process of planning our move. Here we're assembling a rally and infiltrate sequence. We do this by picking possible actions from the drop-down and the details for each. These go into a queue. When we're ready, we submit the queue. We can undo any of this or even go back and pick a different operation/special activity combination. We have the choice of making our move first in the board and then recording it in the app. Alternatively, we could use the app and be guided as we consider our options and finalize our move. Then we submit and update the board as per the app display, just like we do with the bot moves. So that's an overview of the first of the 4 input screens. The next one we'll look at is the remove screen. After setting up an attack in several spaces, the player has to select which enemy units are removed. That's what this screen does. Just tap on the units to take out. This screen is also used for those events that trigger unit removal. The third input screen is one that uses a drag and drop action to relocate units from one board space to another or onto the board. The possible sources and destinations are differently colored for clarity. The final input screen is a simple radio button picker to pick one of 2 different options. With those 4 screens, I've been able to build a player input flows for all the shaded events and all the insurgent operations and activities. Pivotal events. The app will monitor when the player is eligible to play their pivotal event, and will display an extra button at the bottom. Here, the VC player is able to play their pivotal event at the start of the medium scenario. You can see that there is one step requiring manual input, placing 6 VC pieces in cities, and this is done using the drag and drop screen. And that's the 10th offensive played out. One more thing that I wanted to point out. When your available forces drop to low levels, you'll see another option appear in the drop-downs. That's to draw pieces off the map and free them up for future actions. You can nominate spaces and pieces to take from. If you don't use those forces, they stay put. So hopefully you'll agree that's a minimal amount of extra work to enter your moves into the app. It's another argument against supporting more player sides in the app. If there were 3 players, we'd be doing 3 times as much data entry just to use one bot. In that case, we'd be better off using the supplied flowchart. However long you currently take to play your turn, it would be less if you used this app, simply because you'd only have to consider the subset of possible move options and map spaces that are presented to you. If you take an average of 2 minutes for each of your turns, and if synchronizing a bot move with the board took an average of 1 minute, that would mean a short scenario can play out in an hour, while a full scenario would take about 3 hours. The game would hit the table a lot more often. In conclusion, I hope this has been a useful overview on why this app is worth checking out. Thanks for watching.